we have ready to become ready with a new chip processing. Now, chip card, you've already seen, it's called EMV. Has everyone seen it to be called the EMV chip processing? What does EMV mean?
Euro, MasterCard, and Visa.
Awesome. You win a gift card. Karen, remind me later. So, yes, so there's, you'll see a lot of, I'll ask more questions. So you will see a lot of acronyms for what chip card processing means and such. But in just speaking with all of you earlier, the questions that you had, the concerns, you're right on target to want to be aware for the new happening October 1st. Okay, so definitely what I want to do is have this to be interactive. I want to begin with just giving you a visual of what it is to accept EMV chip cards. The new equipment that's coming about must, be enhanced to accept the EMV chip card. If not, if the equipment stays as it is and doesn't have, for example, it's really easy to see. See this slot right here? This is where you'll insert the chip card. And if it doesn't have it come October 1st, the business owner is liable for fraud. Has everyone heard about that? Right? Chip card. Does anyone have a chip card yet? May I see it? May I use it for my own personal terminal as an example? I won't make a transaction today, though. Oops there. So here's the chip. Okay, everyone. So all of you have seen the new cards. So now you'll walk into a store, right? And then Walmart, we were speaking about earlier, Walmart and Target is equipped to take a chip card. So now the process is not any longer where you swipe, take the transaction. You're going to enter the chip card, okay? And you leave it in the terminal until it processes. And then they'll take the chip card out. Pretty simple. Questions?
Will the process be a little bit much more quicker, or is it slower?
Great question. My experience, it has been slower because it has to read the information in the chip card. The information in the chip card no longer contains all of our information, the card number, so it constantly changes. So, of course, fraud doesn't happen this quickly, hopefully not ever, but because the chip contains information, it changes and it will be slower to read. But it'll process and it doesn't take that much longer. Okay? So eventually what's going to happen is the magnetic strip will no longer be there. And that's what they use for the skimming devices right now. Heard of the skimming devices and such? Okay. So definitely this is going to be a major change. Right now, the importance is to get out to our customers and let them know to please update their equipment. Have they spoken to their merchant representative? Any questions you have my card inside the folder, inside your business folder. Please feel free to send me an email, call me. But what I'd like to do is just entertain, speak further about what is going to happen October 1st per your questions, and then we can all learn from one another. Does that sound good? Claudia.
I have a question with when I have used it, they don't ask for my signature anymore.
Right. With a chip card, it's because all of your information is held in the chip itself.
Yeah, if somebody takes my card and I don't know about it and they use it, they don't even have a signature to go with it? Or?
Well, what's happening is, so say somebody takes it, right? Okay, and then they insert it in the chip card. I mean, it still is a business owner's responsibility to ask for identity. I mean, to ask for the license. It's still good to additional.
Hey,
That's a good question.
Can I ask a favor? When people ask questions, could you kind of repeat them before you answer them? Thank you.
Will do. Questions?
Skimming?
Skimming. So with the new technology, with the chip card, they're not going to be able to skim it because the magnetic strip will eventually go away. And even with the chip, That contains the information, so they're not going to be able to skim the back of the card any longer.
But what were they using though to do it?
You know, I don't physically know what it looks like, what the skimming device looks like that they use, but they, for example, gas stations, they could insert it. So when people inserted their card, it could read, it could skim that account number. But the good thing is, Jose, you said you ordered a new device to accept a chip card, right?
Square reader.
Okay.
That's the only way I found out is through Square.
Mm-hmm.
I purchased the new reader, and it'll accept the chip card, swipe, and I think the Apple and other forms of Bluetooth, so I don't have to keep doing this anymore. Because I'm totally mobile. I don't have a store. I do transactions everywhere.
Is that Square, was it free through Square, the new one?
No. I got a discount since I already had it, and it was $49.
$49? Worked pretty well.
I haven't received it yet. I'm supposed to get it before October 1st.
And I know, and for example, like it says using one with Square, so we have one through U.S. Bank that connects via mobile phone, via iPad, and it is encrypted. So it doesn't store the account numbers inside the telephone. Okay. If you have any questions, please let us know. We are helping our customers right now. You can see either Claudia or Karen Jeffrey. We're including what they call an A-Dynamo device with your service. So definitely keep that in mind, just to get our customers up and ready.
So Claudia, it's my understanding that after October 1st, if merchants have not switched their equipment, they will still be able to swipe our cards if our new cards still have the magnetic strip. However, if they do that and I say that wasn't me, Visa and MasterCard will not stand behind it. The liability then transfers to the merchant. Is that true?
Okay, and this is how I understand what you're saying, Karen. So say for example, the customer still has they still have the same card, right? But it has not been updated.
The equipment.
The equipment hasn't. Okay.
The card is updated.
Okay.
But it still has a magnetic strip.
Okay, so if the equipment has not been updated October 1st, then more than likely the equipment will not take that card, because the new equipment has to be, again, you know, it has to be able to accept the chip card. So the customer will be like, it's not reading. The only way that the card will go through is if the customer physically enters their credit card number off the card. That's the only way it'll go through.
But the merchant is not PCI compliant.
Right.
So the liability lies with the merchant, not with Visa and MasterCard.
Yes, excellent question. So the liability will be on the business owner come October 1st if they are not updated with the new compliant equipment. So if there's fraud, it comes right back on to the business owner.
It's still zero liability for the consumer, but then the liability itself shifts to the merchant.
It shifts to the merchant and zero for the customer. Right. I'll get to. How about here and then you, Bill? Right here?
So are all of the merchants supposed to be sending out cards with chips to the customers? And if we, like personally, I have 2 cards and I haven't gotten any in the mail.
Okay.
Should I contact them or?
Contact them. Contact them. We're getting so close. It's becoming so massively
So I can
that.
still use my card I have without a chip. I'm still able to swipe it even after October 1st because there's no chip. Is that correct?
Well, come October 1st. If you do not have the chip card and you go into a business that has updated their equipment, it will not swipe. Because the new equipment must take the chip card. The only way it would take it is, again, if they key entered it. If it didn't work, you could say key enter it. You know, now that you're here, you understand, but so many businesses will not understand.
We have 18 of those terminals that we're getting ready to use, and they all have a little slot for the chips, but they also have the slide thing.
Okay.
So we can't use that slide after October 1st for someone without a chip?
Some will. You will. Some will be able to still come in. Okay, this is what's going to happen. October 1st, because it's mandated, you'll slide it and it will not take it because it's mandated that all credit cards be chipped. So no longer will you be able to slide it.
So there's something happening on the back end that will prevent, even if it has the reader, it won't process it.
On the back end, you've got Visa, MasterCard, Discover.
We'll have to manually enter
You would-
it, and we're liable, even though the customer didn't have a chip card.
Right.
So what should we tell the customer or ask, or, I mean,
To please call their company, call their company and request the chip card. So that's why I'm so happy all of you are here, because just your voices out, will help better understand, especially because you two are with the banks as well. There's so many, and fraud. Jeanette's with a fraud department and accounting firm. So this is huge, where we can all go out and just share the word, right? And also Jason with the Sun News. He's going to do a write-up on everyone here soon too. Thanks, Jason.
How about debit cards? Do they get chips too?
Well, the good thing about debit cards is they will have a chip, but for example, a debit card uses a PIN number as well, so you can use your PIN number. So say, for example, you did go in to an establishment and they still have their equipment that's not updated, they do debit, you can give them the PIN number. But still, it's risky because it's all equipment needs to be updated.
Is there a fee to the merchant to trade out the readers, and if so, can you give us an idea what that might be?
Now, to trade out the readers from their current processing equipment right now, it depends on the bank or the merchant services provider that you're with now. It depends on their program. Some companies will charge you, so much per terminal, or if you want to lease it. Some may include it with the program, but it just depends on the, on the department that you're working with. Good question. It's not that much, with such an upgrade, it's not that much of a cost, for security.
So what are the advantages of having that chip on that card?
So what are the advantages of having the chip on a credit card? So the chip contains all of the information regarding that credit card, right, or debit card on the chip, in the chip. So the chip constantly changes with the number. So it's going to be really difficult for the fraud, people, fraudsters on the back end to get that number. So that's the key, because right now, if you see on the front of your credit card, it's the same account number, right? Where the chip is constantly going to change. It's going to be hard for them to skim it or take that number.
How's it change? How's the number change? Or
on the back end, the technology, can you?
Right?
What's that?
Encrypted.
It's encrypted, but it's like on the back end, it just constantly changes numbers. Like, for example, do all of you use a fob with our computer, and you log in, but the number constantly changes, similar to that type of security.
Like a token.
A
It's
token.
in the back end, it changes.
So it's going to be hard to decipher. And Jeanette, I know you work with fraud in an accounting department. What can you tell us about your customers currently, clientele that's calling in and telling you about fraud and asking about the credit card?
But we're advising them if they don't have that technology or the new equipment, that they should take precaution to to reduce the risk of fraud. So, check the IDs, make sure that the card matches up with the IDs. Kind of back to the old school way. So double checking ID because they need to reduce their risk there.
Okay, no, thank you. And I know also, Jose, you had mentioned earlier, we'll get right to you. You said you were here because you wanted to understand how to prevent fraud. And there are things, when I'm out working with customers, I've run into this, where you'll have someone calling from another state, another country, and they'll say, I need to purchase, $2,000, can you ship it to me right away? Well, the business owner's excited to get that sale, and guess what they do? They ship it, and that card, fraud. And then the back end, when they ship that out, they call into Visa and say, I didn't make that transaction. Well, there's a sudden charge back to the customer's account. So what I say is, if you feel this is legit, I mean, first ask questions and then call Visa and get an authorization number. Once you get that authorization number, you let that sale go, you're fine. So there's ways to prevent. Okay? Good question earlier too.
That was my question. Telephone payment via a credit card, because my business gets lots of telephone payments via credit cards. So how do we protect ourselves against that in this new environment? And are we going to be liable now if we take a telephone payment with a credit card?
What type of business do you have?
Sell furniture.
Okay, furniture, and you sell larger ticket items?
Large tickets.
Okay, so that's a great question. Will you be liable via telephone or how to protect yourself? Main part is that you take down their information, the 3-digit code on the back, the zip code, and then you call Visa. There's a number for Visa. Call and get an authorization.
You have to call Visa first.
Yes, and let the customer know we'll call you back. That's the best way. And once you know your customer, then you can, but they will give you the authorization code for that card and you'll know, and the information. Good question. That's the best way that I find that customers are not having the chargebacks. Have you run into a chargeback before?
No, we have very few now.
Okay.
But it's just a matter with the new chips. We're not, obviously, if it's going over the phone, we can't insert it into a machine.
Right. The only way would be you can still key enter it, but there's still that risk. But that's when you call and get the authorization code. And it's real easy to do. They'll give it to you right on the phone. If it's not accurate or correct, you'll know. Okay. Good question.
So what's the deadline for businesses to have their equipment updated?
Oh, what was that?
What's the deadline for the businesses to have their equipment updated? Because not everyone will have machines by October 1st, or even the debit cards. What's the deadline for that?
The deadline to have it all updated is October 1st, although after October 1st they can order the equipment. They'll still be able to order. Where it's serious is that October 1st it's mandated that all the credit cards will have the chip. So that's where we come in, and the equipment should be right in place. But if not, you know, you're working with your business customers, let them know. A lot of them, I will let you know, I've run into customers that are like, no, we're not going to update our equipment. It's just a way for, you know, the companies to make more money. And no, this is serious. We pull out the documentation, we pull it, we read it. This is going to happen October 1st. And it will affect their business, not just number one, liability, the security, but their sales. I mean, how are they going to, you know, process their credit cards?
What about debit cards?
Now, the debit cards will have still their PIN number. I mean, it is mandated that all debit cards will have the chip card as well, but the security with the debit card is a PIN, so they can still enter the PIN number into the terminal.
But is that for October 1st also?
Also, October 1st. This year, 2015, right? Right around the corner? Less than a month, maybe? Yeah. I mean, did all of you know it was October 1st? Yeah.
Yeah, we just haven't made it.
No one's pushing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, question. So, of course, it's mandated October 1st. If the banks aren't issuing those chip cards, and of course, we always recommend using credit over debit for security purposes because of the PIN number.
Right.
So my next question is, if you go to, say, Target,
Okay.
since they already have the new machines and they actually type in the number, is it going to fall back on the bank now for the fraud because they're the ones who aren't issuing those cards?
Well, that's a good question. So you go into Target, right? And the bank hasn't issued the chip card. But when you go into Target, of course, that chip card will not go through, although they can key enter it. Okay? The banks at this point will not be liable.
Even though they're the ones not issuing the card when they should be?
Right. Because they're still pushing to get it all out, but not at this time. It falls on the business owner.
So how big of a deal is this kind of fraud throughout the country, for example?
How big? You mean as far as?
Dollars. And, I mean, I'm sure it's huge, but.
I mean, because you can just look at one incident. What happened to Target? What happened to Target? All that fraud. What happened to all of us when our cards were compromised? That's just one account, millions of dollars. So, and you look, you know, so many different companies have been what we call hacked. So we're talking billions if it's not updated.
If I understand, if we key in a number, then the bank is not liable for processing that charge?
So when you key in a card,
Right.
okay, you're asking if the bank is not liable?
Yes.
So who is liable when you key enter a card? The business owner is liable. The merchant is liable, because also Visa, MasterCard, Discover. Anytime you key enter a card, it's considered higher risk because you may enter an incorrect number. So automatically it falls on the merchant. So if you if fraud occurred or you accidentally key entered the number incorrectly, well then Visa will know and they'll come back, charge back.
Let's say we key in correctly.
Okay.
Then who's liable if somebody walks in with a card or calls us with a card and we key it in and we key in the zip code and we key in the CDC or CDS or whatever that is on the back, and we've got it all right.
Okay.
All right, it all goes in, we get the off number out of the machine. Are you saying that the receiver of that information, the Visa or MasterCard, is not liable?
Well, the key here is your updated equipment. So if you've updated your equipment October 1st and you're entering, then you're not liable. But if your equipment is not updated October 1st, then you're liable. Does that make sense?
So it's the machine we use that determines our liability.
Right. Because what happens is, and this happened to TJ Maxx. All of you can look this business up. Literally, they were hacked into TJ Maxx because they didn't have their equipment updated. What happens is it becomes non-compliant after so many years. Non-compliant meaning hackers can easily, they figure out a way they're hacking into the equipment. Okay? Where now the updated equipment to accept the chip cards, it's updated. So fraud, if it occurs, then you're not liable. Should not this time around, but if it does. Does that make sense? So it's important to always keep it updated.
So it's the equipment that determines liability.
Right. Right. And that's where it's so huge. That makes sense?
So if it does occur, then the liability falls back on the bank?
If fraud occurs
With the new equipment?
with the new equipment, it falls back on the processor.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I think there's some confusion. The banks do not have the liability.
Okay.
The banks are simply collecting the funds for their customer. The liability is either with Visa, MasterCard, or the merchant.
Or the hacker.
Yeah, or the hacker.
Or the hackers. Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be a whole new world, right? So the majority of you already have your chip card. Have any of you had the experience of going in?
I use it at Walmart all the time.
And it's worked pretty well?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Sandra, also, aren't the gas stations exempt for another year?
And great point to bring up, Karen. Gas stations are, because they're a whole different scenario.
Right.
Point of sale systems, and
Right,
go in.
exactly.
Yeah, they are.
Are they the only ones
so far
that we know of?
Okay.
They've had the same amount of time as everybody else. They should be updated.
No, and see, this equipment's so much easier. I mean, it's just, updated. They send it out. Where the gas stations have what we call the point of sale systems, the Ruby system, this system, and they have to go in on the back end. And there's a lot of technical,
Especially with the fleet.
Fleet cards.
Yeah.
It's just a whole. And you're right. The fleet cards. That's a whole new terminal in itself.
Right. That's behind all that.
Sandra, So you've talked about on-site purchases, we've talked about over the phone, we've talked about cubes. The only thing I can think left is online purchases. I mean, is there any changes there?
So online purchases, for example, we have what we call an e-commerce site. So we can set it up for our customers. E-commerce, people log into and they can make payments, or for example, you know, when you go onto Amazon, so the change has not occurred there as of yet. So we'll still enter our credit card number. And then of course the chip will read and verify. But good question, thank you. Does it make sense? No? And the equipment, tell us. Is it more so because of the way the equipment?
No. I'm just thinking about a question. She says, when I go on Amazon and I enter my card, it doesn't know I have a chip or I don't have a chip. So how is it going to verify?
Well, it's so interesting, the technology behind it. So that your account number is going to tie in with the chip card still. It's connected. You know, it's still connected, so it still reads with that chip card. It's still going to protect you more so. It is confusing because it's like, wait a minute, you know, you're still entering it.
Amazon won't know that.
Right.
They'll never have my chip.
Right. Amazon will not, but Visa, MasterCard, Discover,
right,
they'll know it on the back end because they know that chip card's going to integrate. So it's visually it's hard to picture because you're still seeing both, but it will be able to read it for security purposes. So it'll be interesting to see come October, November, how much fraud is decreased.
Well, and I'm thinking with online purchases, it's possible that the merchant may reject your transaction if it's not an EMV chipped card because they're not going to be willing to accept the liability.
Exactly.
And
Good
so
point.
The system will probably prompt them to say, you know, this is not a valid card.
But these chip cards don't really protect the consumer anymore from a stolen card being used online.
Right.
There's still no protection because there's nobody checking.
That's no different.
That's no
The
different.
consumer always
Right
has
now,
liability anyway to Visa MasterCard. It's just Visa MasterCard that is shifting the liability to the merchant.
Exactly.
So how does that affect the merchants on that? You know, does the merchant
If you're PCI compliant, if you have any equipment and there is fraud in Visa MasterCard cards.
So they're doing this as
They're
well.
still.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I see that this is the Euro MasterCard and Visa is
Euro Pay, MasterCard.
Does Discover?
See, Europe has had this system
I know that.
for years. The
Right.
United
And
States.
they will not accept the card.
They will not.
They won't.
No. Hey, you travel in Europe, you're out of luck if you don't have a chip card.
But will they? Is Discover requiring to get these chips? as
Discover
well?
has a chip now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
Kind of
questions.
standalone, but they're on the bandwagon.
And you'll notice, you brought it up earlier, you'll also notice when you go into restaurants, so more so people will, the waiters, wait staff will come to the table and take your card now versus going to the back. So now it's going to, they'll have to come up front, you know, with the chip card and then, so that will be a good plus. Good plus there.
So you won't let your card walk away.
That's right.
That's the key. Yep. When it walks away, it's just easy to transcribe that account number and all the information. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be a good change for everyone. And it's not an upfront costly change. I mean, it'll be costly if it's not updated, but it's just a really simple transition. The main part is, you know, especially with all of you with the banks, fraud, accounting, business owners, just, you know, share the wealth and let your people know. Okay.
If, say for some reason the machine's not reading the card, and you do a manual entry of it. If we take an imprint of the card or anything, does that protect the merchant from any more liability by having the imprint of the card?
By taking the imprint as documentation?
Yeah.
Okay, so if the card is not going through, right, and you decide to key enter it.
Correct. And it turns out to be fraudulent. Who is then, is it Visa then, I mean, who takes over the liability on that? Is that the merchant?
And that's where, like earlier Jeanette mentioned, you know, old school. If you're going to key enter it, may I see your license and just verify?
But if once again, it falls back on the equipment. If your equipment is up to date, then you don't have the liability. As long as you're following the protocol of
Well,
verifying.
let me just give you, I'm out at the maze, and we're using that equipment, and we have to use the telephone towers. Well, sometimes we lose the signal.
Oh, okay.
And so sometimes we have to manually enter it to make it work.
Got it.
And because in some of our locations, we might have some spots that we kind of have to move it around to get the right signal or something. And
you have
so,
the wireless.
Yeah, you know, I mean, and we're only open for, 6 weeks out of the year, so
Okay.
it's not something that we're gonna update technology out there. We're gonna use the wireless, and if there's sometimes when we can key it in because to get it to go, and that's what we've had to do in the past on occasion.
Okay.
It's not that the equipment is not, I mean, the equipment is actually working, it's just not getting
signal.
the actual signal that it needs to read the chip or the card, but it will read the manual entry. How do I protect the merchant on that?
Okay, so the merchant, well, let me back up, because you have the wireless, and is the merchant in person generally with you, or are they?
The customer?
The customer?
Yeah, they're there, yeah. So
Perfect.
just get the ID.
Okay, get the ID.
Yeah.
And I found too, just as a little trick, because I know this is a wireless unit, and we were having as
That's
well.
what we
It's not this one.
Yes.
Okay. So what you do, here's a little trick here. To reboot it, if you're trying to take there, you just go pound yellow at the same time. It shuts it off, reboots it, then green button, and you should be good. It just has to reboot it.
Yeah, it doesn't
Hopefully.
always.
No. Because we run into it as well.
No, I will tell you that it's always Saturday afternoon when we've got 100 people in line.
Of course.
So, yeah, so it's just sometimes we try to work every magic that we can make
With
to get
this.
those customers through, but just so we're
Okay.
just gonna have to make sure that if anybody manually has to enter anything, that they document that they've looked at the ID.
Yeah, just the ID, that's your main,
And
and you know if
yeah.
it doesn't match, then there's, and then just, you can speak with your, or if you have questions, let us know afterwards, but, have a backup, iPads or phone, not out there either.
It's the signal, it's the signal that's the problem.
Because
It's
see,
not the equipment.
see, what happens is there's certain providers, we came into this, Clyde, remember, it was AT&T, but yet Verizon took it. Verizon took that transaction, but AT&T didn't. So if you have it's just something to think about, another backup, I don't know.
The problem is that we've got kids sometimes out there using, they don't, not everybody, and actually we have some retired people that don't have the smartphones that could do the transaction on the phone type of thing, so, and I don't think we even get
To get it, it's
to get like the
hard.
iPads out there and stuff. We looked at doing that for something else, and
It just doesn't.
there are just a couple spots that,
Okay. Then I would definitely say for right now, for security, just
Make sure
look at
that
their
they're-
license. Bring cash too. Big signs. I know.
So with this huge change in liability, why do you think that this is kind of a secret? That it's, yeah, I'll just leave it at that question.
With such a huge change with liability, I mean, I have to say I feel fortunate working with U.S. Bank because from the get-go, every single day they've been, see this person and pounding it and boom, get out to those people. I mean, it's been a marathon, but
Also,
other companies,
With the merchant statements that you get in every month, if you look back on those for the past several months, there should have been a message on there that this was coming. And how many of us actually read those?
but it is interesting as a consumer. I've gone to places and I'll ask them, well, is your equipment updated to take this? And they'll look at me. A lot of the stores and stuff, they'll look at me like I'm crazy. Or a lot of people that I know, they say, well, why are they coming out with these? The thing is that it's not getting out. Visa and MasterCard are doing a lousy job of getting this information out to the general public. Because if they got it out to the general public, then the public would be then pushing the merchants to make sure that they have it too.
I have the same thing with my chiropractor.
Yeah.
I said, your equipment needs to be updated. And she thought I was trying to sell her something. I said, no. Call your bank. Call your bank. And she goes, well, they should have called me. I said, I agree, but they didn't. So you need to call them. And she's very indignant.
It's amazing how little this really has
And so I
gotten
said,
out.
look on your merchant service statement that you get every month, like your bank statement, and see if there's a message on there. Sure enough, there was. She just chose to ignore it.
But
anyway.
it should be, it's unfortunate that it's really not getting
But
out to
this
the general
is-
public
that's
too.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And, no, you're right. You think you'd see it on Good Morning America, this news, is, but, yeah, I'm glad all of you are now. Now, what's that?
We'll see it September 30th.
September 30th, it'll be out. Be looking September 30th. But, and know that if you would like additional information, you can go to the site, www.chipcardnow.com. Phenomenal site, answers all your questions about the fraud, what's happening, what will occur, in case you want to, further give out to your customers and learn for yourself. But yeah.
I'm not sure if you know if it's true or not, but like earlier she said, you know how you can imprint the card?
Okay.
Do you know if it's really true where everybody's supposed to go away from imprinting the card and to the flat card? Because like with us at Washington Federal, our cards will no longer have the numbers raised. They're going to be completely flat with the chip.
Target's also flat.
Yeah, Target's is flat as well,
Right.
and so are the credit unions here.
Okay, no, good point. Imprinting will go away. Imprinting will go away, just as exactly what you said with the card. You're not going to be able to imprint it any longer. Yeah, good point to bring up.
So Sandra, what do we do if these little fobs on our phones? If the magnetic stripe is going to go away, are we going to get a new reader for the phone?
Great question. So the new readers, they will be out soon. Once they're out, you will be notified, but again, be proactive. I check in about another month. Right now, they're stating that you can swipe it through, okay? But just check back in about another month because they'll be updated as well. Okay. Yeah, good question.
I think we have time for one more.
Okay.
Come on, one more.
Question of the
Well,
day.
I have just a suggestion.
Sure.
I always suggest to our clients that they make sure they have fraud insurance with their business insurance, and hopefully that would help with or without the new equipment. It's always a good idea to make sure that that is included in your umbrella package.
So with your insurance company,
Right.
just ask for fraud insurance.
Right. Make
So
sure
that
you
would
have
cover
fraud
credit
insurance.
card.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
As far as I know. I don't know if they're changing it because of this change or not. I haven't heard, but.
Okay, have fraud insurance.
Is that something you would get through?
Just your general liability. Mhm. Right.
That's a good point to bring up, especially now. So last question. Thank you,
Was she
everyone.
wonderful or what?
Oh, you're wonderful.